Yoga and Fitness. I'm a personal trainer and a massage therapist. With my personal training, I have a speciality focus on women's wellness and also training people with specialist conditions, including orthopedic conditions and people who have had cardiac issues as well. But today I'm going to speak to you about the pelvic floor and why it's so important and what it does and what we can do to make it stronger. So what is the pelvic floor and what does it do? Why do we need to do all this work for it? Why do we need to think about it during pregnancy and after pregnancy as well? So we always hear this emphasis on, are you doing your pelvic floor? Are you doing it? Are you doing it? We get it from everywhere, but what is it and what does it actually do? So here is my pelvis. So within your pelvis, so this is your uterus around here. So within your pelvis, you have a hammock underneath here. It's like a bowl of muscles, and these are your pelvic floor muscles. So as you can see, these here are your sit bones. So when you're sitting down on something hard, you can feel something in your bum. They are your sit bones. This bit here is the pubis right at the front, and then right at the back, obviously this is upside down, that is your coccyx. And as you can see, the red is all the pelvic floor muscles. So you can see how much they go across the entire pelvic floor region. So it's not just a couple of muscles, it is all the way through and it supports everything in there. So what does the pelvic floor do? What is the function of it? So prior to pregnancy or any issues or anything, if you have a normal functioning pelvic floor, so imagine this is your pelvic floor, where my hands are is the end of it. So as we inhale, it comes down, so it matches the diaphragm. As we exhale, it comes up and it actually forms a dome shape. So more like an upside down salad bowl, just like with the pelvis when I turned it upside down. So we inhale, it comes down, it relaxes, exhale, it comes up into a dome shape. So it mimics the diaphragm and it works in collaboration as well with your deep abdominals and also the muscles through your thoracic lumbar region. So it mimics the diaphragm. So what is its function? Its actual function is to hold up all the organs, everything within your torso. It's to help provide stability. And it's also to help you to go to the toilet and hold in when you need to go to the toilet. So for women, there are obviously 3 holes in which the pelvic floor helps to control. So you've got your urethra, so you can actually go to the loop. You have your vagina, and where obviously baby comes out if you have a natural birth. Or you have the other bit, your bum. So it opens and relaxes and it closes to retain everything inside there as well. So they're the 3 main functions, and then obviously of course with your holding in of your abdominal torso, of keeping everything in. And it also speaks to your deep abdominals. So as I've said, it helps with your breathing as well. It mimics the diaphragm. So that is the original function of your pelvic floor. So what happens to the pelvic floor during pregnancy? During pregnancy, your pelvic floor needs to give. So as I've said, the pelvic floor already, it comes down and then it lifts up. So what happens during pregnancy? Well, when baby is is growing in your uterus, you're adding extra weight. So it's going to be lengthened. Now, a muscle under lengthening, if you think it's got to hold everything together as well. So as it lengthens, it's trying to support everything that's up there, so it's under a bit more duress than normal. So it's not going to be, it's going to come back to this position all the time, as opposed to being here. So if you think it's always going to be here, so over pregnancy it's getting slack, obviously it doesn't get quite this slack, this is just an example. So during pregnancy it gets slacker and slacker, it gives a little bit more, and obviously with the hormone relaxing as well, it's going to help to open it up. With your pelvis moving, your hips opening to allow more space for baby, it opens up a little bit more and it stretches a little bit more. So why do we need to strengthen it? So as a muscle strengthens, lengthens, it gets weaker if it's not used properly. So yes, it can stretch, but when you put more pressure under it, for example, when you cough or when you sneeze, or you need to hold in going to the toilet, especially with baby pressing against the bladder, and as baby gets bigger, it's going to keep pushing against the bladder, so there's not going to be quite as much room in the bladder, and you're going to need to urinate more often. As baby grows, it has an impact on your digestive system as well, so it kind of pushes everything up, so that's where constipation and that can come from. So it's important to remember to relax the pelvic floor as well. So it's going to have to allow more room within this abdominal region, because if it stayed where it was and it doesn't have any give in it, baby's going to struggle to grow a little bit more. So just that little bit extra room by it coming down just helps it and allows baby a little bit more space to grow, a little bit more room for your bladder, and a little bit more room for your bowels and your digestive system. So that helps. So again, during pregnancy, as it comes down like this, as it slackens, you need to be able to still control it. You still need to be able to have that conscious tensioning of it, which is why we need to do the exercises. Also helps to prevent urinary leakage, and it helps to prevent prolapse later on as well. So that's what happens during pregnancy. Also, after you've had baby, it's going to help you to get stronger quicker and recover better. So as well, during pregnancy, as baby grows, it's getting slacker and slacker, but as baby's born, if you're having a natural birth, then as baby comes out, it's stretching the pelvic floor. So it's not only what you'd normally have, the opening for the pelvic floor, and it allows that space, now you've got a baby's head to come out of it, you've got a whole baby to get out of there. So not only are you going to have to get this baby out, but the pelvic floor needs to relax enough to open up to allow this baby to come out, and needs to be strong enough to help get it out as well. So as I said previously, the pelvic floor talks to the deep abdominals. Now the deep abdominals, they can help get baby down. Helps with the muscles and the ligaments that surround the uterus as well. So it's going to help get that baby to come down as well. Now we know that when we use a muscle, it helps it to get stronger. Yeah. A muscle helps it to get stronger, it adds more tone, adds more strength. Now the more you use a muscle, the more mobile it is. So that's with stretching and strengthening it as well. So we want to be doing that. And that is why we need to be conscious of doing the pelvic floor exercises during pregnancy, all the way throughout, and then start them as soon as you can after pregnancy. As soon as you feel comfortable to do it, the more you use the muscle, then the blood flow comes to it, it clears all the rubbish out, it helps encourage new blood flow to come in, and it also helps it to encourage the healing and the recovery process. So we all know after we've had baby, we want to be up and at it straight away as quick as we can. Now, if you continue to do your pelvic floor exercises all the way through pregnancy and afterwards, it's going to help you with your recovery. So it's going to help the pelvic floor coming back in. It's going to help if you have abdominal separation. It's going to bring everything in. It's going to give you that support. So that mum tum that you see flouted around everywhere, and you may experience that softness in your abdomen. Well, you will experience that softness after a baby. You will experience that softness in your abdominals, and it's to help bring everything back into play. If you ignore it, if you don't use it, then it's just going to stay soft. It's going to get some tone back to it, but not as much as you'd want. So we need to be focusing on that. So we want to be bringing everything back into play in the core, in the pelvic floor. So you do it all the way throughout pregnancy, and you'll be able to start as soon as you want to after you've had baby. This also applies for C-section. So if you've had a C-section, regardless if it was planned or emergency, I myself had an emergency C-section. At the time of filming this, it was 10 weeks ago with this little one. So I had an emergency C-section, so I could crack on my pelvic floor muscles within that first week because I felt able to. And then later on I started more with the deeper abdominal muscles when I felt more able to do so. Everybody's different, everybody heals at a different rate. And I felt able to go and do a few things every now and again, not too much because you tire very quickly after a major operation like a C-section, because it's a big operation. Don't think it's small. Having a baby is big in itself. You need that time to recover. So even after having a C-section, you obviously need a lot of time to recover. So encouraging new blood flow to that area through the pelvic floor exercises is only going to help, but only when you feel ready and only when you feel able to do so. Let's put this down. So pelvic floor dysfunction and problems that you can experience. So obviously after having a baby, everything's stretched, you haven't really got that communication going on with your core, going on with your pelvic floor, so that's where you need to start re-establishing it. So that's when we start re-establishing that connection with your pelvic floor. We consciously do it, whereas before the subconscious version of it was much more effective, whereas now we need to be a bit more conscious about it. So we actually have to think about engaging the pelvic floor. So later on in life, if we don't look after our pelvic floor, this is where urinary leakage can happen. This is where, and eventually this is where prolapses could happen. So you think about bladder prolapsing, uterine prolapsing, or rectocele prolapsing. So this is where certain organs within the abdominal region can collapse because they're not being supported by the pelvic floor. Now, I'm not saying this to scare you, I'm saying this because this can happen. Now, after childbirth, it might not necessarily happen immediately, but there is a possibility of it happening later on in life, particularly when you hit the perimenopausal or menopausal age. Because of the drop in estrogen, which helps with the toning of our muscles, because of the testosterone, which helps with the toning. The drop in testosterone when we hit perimenopausal, menopausal age, it will stop you from building the muscles up as quickly. So we need to be thinking long term. So after baby, you need to be thinking of, right, I need to get on with your pelvic floor exercises. Start them now, start them today. So get on the pelvic floor exercises, because you don't want to get to the point where you're worried about prolapsing, any form of prolapsing, and you don't want it to run your life, really, do you? You don't want to be worried about incontinence. You don't want to be worried about going out for a run or going out for a walk and thinking, oh, I need to plan my route ready for the next toilet. By doing the pelvic floor exercises, you're going to give yourself more control. You're going to give yourself that freedom back, and you're going to give yourself more strength. We're going to be drawing the abdominals in, because it's not the superficial, the top abdominals, the six pack, that are going to help to draw everything back in. It's those deep abdominals, the transverse abdominis. So those deep abdominals that talk to your pelvic floor, that's all going to help draw everything back in. So the foundations of a strong pelvic floor for strength during pregnancy and helping with a faster recovery. There's a few simple tips that you can do to encourage work through your pelvic floor and to start strengthening it. So doesn't matter if you are pregnant now, you're thinking about getting pregnant, you have been pregnant, you have had the baby, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what stage you're at, you can do this whenever you want. You can do this and start it at any point. It's never too late to do something and take action with your pelvic floor. So this is a couple of easy ways to engage your pelvic floor. The best way to start, particularly if you do find that you don't really have much control of your pelvic floor, is to start with a laying down position. So I'm just going to talk to you about where we're going to be drawing in. So as we draw in with the pelvic floor, so as I've said before, we inhale, pelvic floor comes down. As we exhale, pelvic floor comes up. So we inhale, it relaxes, exhale, it comes up and contracts. So we might as well use the breath to help us with that contraction, help us to think about that contraction and re-establish that connection. So as you exhale, I want you to think about the pubis, so your bony bit at the front of your pelvis, and your coccyx right at the back, your sit bone, your tailbone. I want you to think about those. And as you just you can take a lay down, have your knees bare, have your feet on the floor, gives you a little bit more grounding. So take a deep breath in and exhale and think about what your pelvic floor is doing. You can also use vision to help you, like imaginary tools. I like to use the balloon. So as you inhale, the balloon inflates, pelvic floor comes down. As you exhale, balloon shrinks and contracts, pelvic floor pushes up, pushes the air out. Inhale, balloon expands. Exhale, balloon contracts and shrivels up. So I want you to think about that action of the balloon expanding and the balloon retracting again. So think about that, have that in your head, and every time your belly inflates as you inhale, think about relaxing all this area. Everything around here. Think about relaxing this entire area, particularly around from your pubis to your coccyx. So think about relaxing this area as you inhale. Now, as you exhale, this is where we start having the active exhalations. So we inhale, everything expands. As we exhale, think about drawing your coccyx and your pubis. You're drawing them together as you exhale. Inhale to relax, balloon fills. Exhale, balloon shrinks. Draw the pubis and the coccyx together. So think about that. Inhale to expand, exhale to contract, and you're drawing the pubis and the coccyx together. How much can you draw them together? Now, the reason I ask you to do that is because it helps emphasize the lower abdominals and start getting everything a little bit more involved in the lower abdominals. So in the lower abdominals. So we can start, as I said, with a lying down position. So what we do, take a breath in. Exhale, pubis to coccyx. And again, inhale. Exhale, pubis to coccyx. Simple as that. And that's going to really help you start to fire up your pelvic floor and bring it back into play and get some blood flow and action and communication with it. So you might want to start doing that just a few days, just for the first week or so, just to get used to it. Because if you've lost that communication for a while and you haven't re-established it after a while, it can take a little while to come back. So don't worry if it does take a little while to come back. Don't worry if you don't get it straight away. It's fine, it doesn't matter. So think about that initially. So you can start with it lying down, because then you're not working against gravity. You've got to focus on that instead of focusing when you're standing up. It's easier to focus on this when you're taking gravity out of the equation. So what do we do next? We think about it from the side. So we can take a breath in, exhale. So you can see the difference from the inhale to the exhale. Now this isn't the sucking in the belly, it's not that at all. We are really utilising the pelvic floor and the deep abdominals and the breath to get that communication back. So it all starts with the breath. That's all you need to think about. And then you can start going from there. But this is something really simple for you to think about. So when you're starting to do the reconnection with your pelvic floor, if you are really struggling to picture the pubis to coccyx and draw in, when you take a lie down, you can get one of these Pilates balls. I have a few in stock if anyone wants to purchase any, or you can just use a pillow or whatever you can find and pop it between your knees. You take a deep breath in. As we exhale, you give the ball a squeeze, because that also helps to engage the pelvic floor, because you engage your pelvic floor when you engage your inner thighs. So again, breathe in, relax, have the ball between your knees, but you're not squeezing, just relax, and then exhale. And there you go. So think about when you're doing the exhale. Imagine you're blowing out birthday cake candles and there's loads on there. There's 100 candles on there. And you're aiming to blow them all out in one breath. Big deep breath in. Get rid of those 100 candles. And that's going to help you to engage your pelvic floor. If you do find your pelvic floor is a bit tight, because as with any muscle group, we want to contract and to stretch as well. This is a really nice, simple stretch you can do. Soles of the feet together, open your knees, arch out through your spine and relax. Try and relax your knees down as much as you can as well. And there you have it. So there is some tips for your pelvic floor. So we've gone through what is the pelvic floor and what it does, what happens during pregnancy and how to recover after childbirth and C-section, dysfunctions of the pelvic floor, and also how to start the foundations of building a strong pelvic floor, irregardless if you've had a child or not. So if you do find you have a bit of softness, a bit of weakness in your pelvic floor, irregardless if you've had children or not, you can utilise these tools to help you build a new strong pelvic floor. And it's something you can do every single day. Practice that pelvic floor face. I want you to get cracking on that. And you can share the pelvic floor face if you really want to. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you gain a lot for it. If you have any questions or you want to do some further training with myself, please do get in touch. Otherwise, you take care.